Thanks, Mako. So yeah, we'll get started. So hello everyone. We're really, really glad that you joined us. Thanks for being interested in our group. I am Jeremy Foote. I'm faculty at Purdue University. I will tell you a little bit more. I wish we had time to introduce all the students, to introduce all of you who, prospective students who are joining us. But unfortunately, as you can see, there are many of you, which is wonderful. We're really, really glad that you're here. So the goal today, as Mako said, is to give you kind of an introduction to what we're doing. We know that many of you are in the midst of making decisions about when and whether and how and where to apply to graduate school. And we hope that this can be helpful and that you can at least learn a little bit more about what we're doing here. I know that some of you may have come with as you'll learn in just a second, we're kind of a very interestingly structured group across 3 campuses, but with a lot of connections, pretty strong connections between us all, that some of you may have come to this meeting expecting that you will be that you only wanted to apply to one program. We encourage you to sort of learn about the other programs and think about it. There are students in the room today who had thought that they wanted to apply to one program, ended up applying to and joining another. And so it's certainly worth learning about, we think. And so, yeah, with that, we will get started. I wonder, can't figure out where the chat is. If someone would share the Etherpad as well with everyone. I did not send it yet to the prospective students who are joining us. I think it would be nice for them. There's some links there to slides and an FAQ. So with that, the plan today is we've already begun the brief introduction and orientation. We'll talk about a little bit of our research, a little bit more about our programs, and an introduction to the faculty. We'll have sort of a combined group level Q&A session. Many of you submitted questions already, and we will answer as many of those as we can. We've tried to prioritize a few we wanted to make sure to answer. And then a lot of the time will be in breakouts where you can meet with folks at, we think there'll probably be time for kind of 2 different campuses and sort of move between breakout rooms and get to know a little bit more about programs that way. So to give a little bit of a kind of overview of what our group is, we are an interdisciplinary group. We have some alumni and affiliated faculty sort of at many different places in the world. But the primary faculty right now that are accepting PhD students are me, Jeremy Foote at Purdue, Mako Hill at Washington, and Aaron Shaw at Northwestern. As a group, there's a lot of, as you'll learn when you talk to the graduate students, there's a lot of variation in the sorts of things that we do and the ways that we study things. But in general, if you sort of had to pick the median of the group, we study online communities, participation online, and learning using mostly quantitative and computational methods. And that's considered very broadly. We use lots of different methods. Many of us also use qualitative methods of one kind or another to help to supplement that. And we mostly do what most people would consider social science, social computing, or HCI, and or learning science research. So that's a very high level overview of the group. I think it's worth being a little bit more explicit about, especially those of you who are thinking of applying to PhD programs. So, at Purdue, I'm affiliated with the Brian Lamb School of Communication. We have a number of different units, but it's not particularly important which unit you apply to. I am affiliated with Organizational Communication and Media Technology and Society. If you apply to either of those, they'll be sort of routed to groups that I'm affiliated with. My academic interests, kind of how do I differ from the median of the group? I am a little bit more interested in sort of the way that individual people make decisions about how and whether and when to participate in groups and online communities, and how those influence people and the ways that they participate in them. So I'll let the other faculty introduce themselves as well. Mako, if you want to go next.
Sure. I'm Benjamin Mako Hill. I go by Mako. I'm based at the University of Washington, although this year I'm actually on sabbatical and based at Princeton in the Center for Information Technology Policy. I'm associated with a number of PhD programs at the University of Washington. Those, my primary appointment is in communication, in the Department of Communication, but I have also in the past advised or co-advised PhD students in the departments of human-centered design and engineering. I think there's actually one student here in computer science and engineering and in the information school. Although actually in all those programs, every time I've worked with every time I've advised a student in those spaces, it has been in the context of co-advising. I think that again, I think that what's different about my research. I think that we do a lot of work together. I think that I'm increasingly, this is not a unique feature of my work, but I'm increasingly interested in questions of governance and life cycles, and I've done a bunch of work in the past which focuses on sort of learning in the context of online communities. All right, happy to turn it over to Aaron.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Mako. Thanks, Jeremy. And thanks to everyone for showing up today. It's really great. So I'm Aaron Shaw. I'm at Northwestern University, where my primary affiliation is in the Communication Studies Department. I'm also affiliated with the Sociology Department here. And I mainly work with students in two doctoral programs at Northwestern. That is the Media Technology and Society program, MTS, and the Technology and Social Behavior program, TSB. TSB is a joint degree program between the School of Communication and the School of Engineering, mainly communication studies and computer science. And MTS is almost entirely staffed with faculty from the Communication Studies program. I also put down the Center for HCI and Design, which is sort of another space within the university that's newish that I'm involved with that has a lot of the kind of HCI footprint within the university. So if you're interested in that, might take a look at that link too. My research interests and background. So my doctorate's in sociology, and my background before that is kind of in interdisciplinary social sciences and even humanities. I'm usually oriented towards sort of social theory process questions in various ways. A lot of stuff to do with governance, a lot of stuff to do with who participates online and why. I'd say more than the other faculty in the group, I've done work on participation inequalities in various online domains and spaces, and you'll hear a little bit about an example project from that space. Also been getting, partly as a function of some of the interests reflected in current student members of the group, been getting more focused on things to do with content moderation and community governance through content moderation and bots. So thinking about nuts and bolts of how online communities manage their day-to-day operations. Yeah, so that's probably as good a summary as any. So I'll turn it back over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Aaron and Mako. I should have asked, if either of you have anything to add about sort of my summary of the group, or if there's anything else that you wanted to add before we talk about our research, a few examples.
It was perfect.
Great. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is introduce you to really a smattering of research that kind of recently completed or ongoing research projects that are happening, to sort of give you an idea of the breadth and scope of the sorts of things we're working on. So we're going to be talking about a project about governance capture on Wikipedia, underproduction in free and open source software, group sanctions on the Fediverse, participation and equality in the gig economy, and persuasive narratives on Reddit. And we have students who are going to kind of discuss very, very briefly, unfortunately briefly, the things that they've been working on. So let's start with the first one, which I think is Zorene's, right? Around governance capture.
That's right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zoreen. I'm a PhD student in HCDE at UW. My project was a project with my advisors, Mako and Kate Starbird in HCDE, looking at this phenomenon of governance capture, where the institutions, the rules making and norms structuring institutions of Wikipedia language editions are taken over by a small group of editors. And we did a qualitative study comparing the Serbian and Croatian Wikipedias and found that there were these differences and that made certain projects more vulnerable to capture related to how insular their bureaucracy on their internal bureaucracies were, as well as how personalistic their institutions were. So this was actually a qualitative and comparative study of two online communities. And the next thing that we're doing now is turning this into doing a follow-up quantitative study that does some hypothesis testing across all Wikipedia language editions.
Next project is Kaylee's.
Hey y'all, I'm Kaylee Champion. I'm at University of Washington, Department of Communication, and I study how people work together to build amazing things online like Wikipedia and Linux. And this project is on kind of the Linux side of that investigation. So the question here is, you think about the software that kind of is in the sort of digital infrastructure of the web, the cloud, everything that we use kind of runs on some of this digital infrastructure, and a lot of it is actually produced by volunteers in online communities cooperating to make software. And that sounds lovely and exciting. We might hope that the software that gets used the most, that we rely on the most, that's necessary for us to do business and to communicate with one another, we would hope that that software is the best quality. And maybe if we don't use it, it doesn't matter if it's great quality, but the stuff that everybody uses, we might hope that that's the best. Unfortunately, it turns out there's many cases where the stuff that's the best quality is maybe not used very much. And more concerningly, in the sort of opposite case, the stuff that gets a lot of use, but unfortunately is sort of falling into neglect, disrepair, and just not that high of quality. So this paper that's on the screen here shows some of the initial kind of quantitative investigation of where those particular packages are. And my follow-up work since then, and that will be part of my dissertation, is to try to unlock how this happens over time, what the sources and causes are, and hopefully build a pathway toward like how we are going to remediate and solve that in the future.
So we have Carl.
Hi, I'm Carl Kuleiser. I'm a fourth year PhD student in technology and social behavior at Northwestern. And this is work that I've done with Aaron and Nate. And this has to do with the Fediverse, which is a decentralized social network. And one of the interesting complications, we do a lot of work in the lab related to content moderation, and specifically content moderation in a non-corporate setting or by people who aren't necessarily paid. And in the Fediverse, everything is decentralized. It's thousands of different servers that each have their own rules and norms. What we look at in this study is when these servers come into conflict and the servers block to each other, what happens to the collateral, the people that used to have connections that now are blocked. And we find in this study asymmetric effects when it comes to their activity levels. So on the blocking server, we see a significant decrease in activity after these blocks for accounts that used to have a connection that's now been severed. We find no similar effect for those on the blocking server. We also looked at toxicity. We found no real change after the defederation blocking events.
Thank you very much, Carl. Floor.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Floor Fears. I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University. And this line of research within the CDSC is around participation inequalities, which sort of thinks about who is more likely to participate in like different spaces online and why that might be the case. So how people's privilege or their position allows them to really benefit from some of the resources that are encompassed by the internet. And so this particular project is around the gig economy, in which we focus on TaskRabbit and Amazon Mechanical Turk, which are two gig platforms. And by sort of analyzing national representative survey data, we try to understand how people from different backgrounds might be able to sort of get further in participation. So we divided participation into having heard of the platform, having visited, having made an account, or having completed a task. And across all these 4 stages, people with higher education and higher digital skills, and then also younger people are more likely to engage in that way with these platforms. And so really what this points at is that some of these opportunities are open and available to people who are more privileged already. And in that way, it's sort of pointing at an exacerbation of inequality that already exists in society more broadly.
Thank you, Flor. And last but not least, Ryan.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan. I am a PhD student in the communication department at Purdue. And this is just a brief overview of a project that is underway for me, still working on it, so do not have results yet, but gives you a little taste of what some of my research interests are. Looking at narrative persuasion on Reddit and using Reddit as the context to look at how small stories can influence persuasion. So there's a subreddit, Change My View, where people engage in good faith discussions. So they're trying to have debates where they may be convinced. And there's a way of measuring persuasive outcome because there are awards given to people who actually succeed in changing someone's mind. So we're able to see arguments that are persuasive. So the hypothesis here is that comments using these small stories, which is an emerging construct for looking at snippets of stories that are used in everyday conversation on social media, will have a higher successful persuasion rate than those comments without small stories. And so gathering computationally a large corpus, going to be in the process of manually labeling data to be able to train a model to then be able to go through and analyze the results of whether or not small stories predict higher rates of persuasion in this type of setting.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you. Thanks everyone who presented. There's lots of other things that we are doing as a group. I would highly encourage you to click the links on this. You know, there's a link in Etherpad. It's a bit of a trail to get here, but there's a link in the Etherpad to these slides. And then on the slides, there's links to our wiki. Check out the people page, the publications page, as well as our research blog. You know, definitely encourage you to, if you're thinking of applying to our group, you know, figure out some of the things that we're doing and get a sense of the other work that we're working on. So with that, we're going to move on to a Q&A session. I have copied most of the questions. There were a few that seemed a little more appropriate to me for breakout rooms. I've copied most of the questions to the Etherpad, which is linked in the chat. And then we'll try and chat about as many as we can for maybe the next 15 minutes or so to give enough time for breakout rooms. So Aaron and Mako can help me, and then graduate students that want to chime in as well, please do. But I don't know, Aaron or Mako, were there any of the questions that either of you wanted to start with?
I wanted to jump in with one thing. So a bunch of these questions you'll see in the Etherpad color codes who's edited the text, at least until you remove it. You'll see a bunch of them with these orange comments on them that say things like, please send this question to the Cognizant Graduate Program Director. So like Jeremy mentioned, the 3 of us are affiliated with 3 different universities, and within those universities, often different graduate programs. Some of these questions are just things that it's like out of scope for us to reasonably address in this kind of setting, because really our focus here is on helping you get to know a little bit more about our research group and the work that happens in our group with the students who work here with us. So it's not that we don't think these are good questions, that we don't think they're worth addressing. It's just that they don't really make sense within this framework. So if you have specific questions about any of the specific universities involved or the specific programs, you can try sending those to the kind of respective faculty member, right? So if you're curious about something to do with Northwestern's MTS program, I'm the one. And I even used to be the program director of that one, but not anymore. Basically, for some of these, it just that's what that label was about. So just wanted to clarify that before we jump in, and we tried to cherry pick out a few of the questions that we felt like really spoke to broad things that are most applicable in this setting to kind of help you understand the group and how work happens in the group, and hopefully we can address those a bit more now.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. The other thing I should mention, I mean, I don't think we will even get to all of these, but if there's a burning question you want to put in the chat as well, like, we can try and keep an eye on that. So maybe we can start with the first one that we had at the top of the section, like what qualities and skills are required for students who apply to our group. I don't know, Mako, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say that there's a range of qualities and skills that folks bring, and I think that I would encourage when you're in the breakout sessions to maybe ask the people that are there for a little bit about their own paths. I think that that we have that there's not a single path. Definitely, we've had students that have had, like, in some cases, like, quite long careers before they've come here, working in a range of different fields. We've had, a student who had a career as a physician, and a student who had, like someone else who's worked in IT or in, as a programming job, or in a range of different sorts of things. I think that we're not there's in that sense, there's not like a single thing that we're looking for. I do think that we're looking for folks that have generally speaking, a real interest in the kinds of substantive questions that our group has done work on, and hopefully, that's why we've devoted as much time as we did in this presentation to talking about examples of the research. If you saw anything there that was like, wow, that's great, that's the kind of question that I want to answer, I think then you're the kind of person that we're interested in. I think that that people bring our work is really at the intersection of work that's sometimes a little bit more technical, and work that's very focused on questions that are very much more social scientific in nature. And so I think that I think most of our students will either bring maybe a background in terms of with technical skills. So maybe they've worked in sort of computing or informatics, either as a profession or as an interest, or they've done sort of statistics or math. That's been a common that's a path that people have taken. Or maybe they haven't done any of that stuff, right? But they have a real interest in kind of social questions and sort of theory and these sorts of things. Or perhaps neither of those things are true, but they've done a lot of work in communities like the ones that we study, and they have a strong intuition for how these things sort of work. I think that we're interested in folks that have, or maybe more than one of those sorts of things. So I think that we're open to folks that have and I think that a real strength of our group is that it brings together people that are maybe strong in one of these areas but not the others, in a way that I think is very complementary. If other folks have things they wanted to add, I mean, really anyone who's in the group.
I put something in the chat that might be helpful, which is we have a blog post where we have a section of the blog post entitled, "What do you look for in PhD applicants?" Where we tried to provide a really general answer to this kind of question too. And
hopefully not completely contradicted by everything I just said. So
I think it was perfectly
okay.
resonant. So yeah, but you might take a look at that too. It's just a complimentary kind of way to put it. But yeah, if others in the group want to respond to that, that'd be great. I would mention this question also sort of overlaps with some of the others that we thought would be ideal for discussing here, which have to do with how much research experience do I need? How many publications should I have already? How much quantitative social science experience do I need? And I think, as you heard in Mako's response, there's really a lot of diversity and heterogeneity within the group, and that's I think something that's really a strength. And we don't have like a template or a requirement for what we expect everybody to have done before they start their doctoral programs working at in our group or with our universities. And we're much more interested in understanding where people are at and where they're trying to get to, and if it seems like there's a reasonably good fit, and that we seem like reasonably capable people who could help you achieve your goals and advance your research career in conversation with the members of this group, then that's probably going to be exciting, and that's the stuff that really jumps out of the application piles at each place.
I think along with that, I would say, like, I think we aren't trying to produce a certain kind of scholar or student. I mean, and obviously, like, many of us, like we said, like many people end up doing quantitative and computational work, and that's sort of where, as faculty, I think our strengths are, especially for communication, compared to your typical communication scholar. But there are many members of our group who don't end up doing lots of computational work and don't end up doing quantitative research at all, and that's great. I think that if there's a way that as a group and as faculty members we can help folks who have overlapping interests that are really doing interesting things, I think that's wonderful.
I mean, I think the other thing this is worth thinking about, and this is a feature of, I think, basically all PhD programs, is that when you're applying to a PhD program, I mean, really, you are signing up to do research, to sort of like, it is kind of like a research position for a pretty extended period of time. And I think that, things you can do to signal that you have some idea of what that involves, and that and that might be through research experience. It could be work that you've done in classes. It could be work that you've done as a research assistant in other places. It might have actually nothing to do, the research experiences that you have may have nothing to do with the particular contexts in which we do work. So, I mean, I think that we've had a recent graduate of our program, Nate DeVontis, whose previous research experience had been in like glass science, right? But he understood what it meant to do research, and he was very interested in doing research, and not in terms of material science, but in terms of the kinds of stuff that we were interested in doing, and ended up being a really good match.
Maybe we really don't have much time for this Q&A. I know I'll mention quickly, like, even after the breakout sessions, that a number of the students have provided their email addresses, and have offered to answer questions as well, even after the breakout session. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Maybe one question I know that I'm interested in talking about and hearing the perspective of members of the group is that there are folks who, this under research group, the second one down, is sort of, I'll summarize it as saying, like, folks that are coming from a CS background or a like more technical background, like, what does that look like to be in a communication program or HCDE type program? I don't know if maybe one of the students who has a background more like that would be willing to answer.
Yeah, I can I think I can speak to that. I'm Matt. I'm in the TSP program here at Northwestern. I did my undergrad in computer science, and I worked as a software engineer. This is my first year in the program, so I worked as a software engineer last year. And I think that it's kind of what at least I've found it to be, a lot of kind of choose your own adventure, and that there are ways in which computing experience is not that different from social science, and there are ways in which it's very different. But I think both of those are surprising, and I ultimately haven't found it to be all that different from just kind of some of the settings that I've been more familiar with in the past. I think some of that is probably owed to TSB's kind of spanning between communications and computer science. And so I don't know what like HCDE is like at UW, but I think that I certainly was going in with a little bit of apprehension about entering a new subject area that I didn't really know that much about, but I haven't found it to be all that disorienting.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like at least I really love the area we're in. I mean, not surprisingly, but it's sort of a lot of folks from the computing world are very interested in social scientists and the questions that social scientists have and the ways that the social scientists have great questions, and computational approaches can really help to answer those. So both computer scientists are interested in social science type questions, and social scientists are interested in computational type approaches, and I think overall it's a nice synergy, I guess. Okay, any last?
I had one question I wanted to nominate because I think it's a relatively quick answer.
Thanks.
Which was, there was a question for the down the list, which how do I decide which methods I want to use, and how do I figure out what other what methods different advisors or people in the group are using? There's a very general answer to this question, which is probably good advice for anyone applying to graduate school in general, is every person that is a potential advisor is going to have a website in which they list papers that they've recently written. If you want to get a sense of what the expertise is and the kinds of work that they've done, just click through that, like open up a bunch of those papers. If you're really interested in methods, go to the methods section. If you're interested in theories, go to that. But just read the abstracts of the papers. I think that if you are, that's the kind of, you'll find that a lot of those works, a lot of those papers, at least for the folks that are in this group, will be led by students. It's very common, almost all the time, the first author of the paper will be a student. And I think that if you're going to be joining this program, and you're not going to be, you might have different sort of substantive interests, but I think that there's a sense in which the range of the kinds of things that are produced by folks in this group or by the individual faculty, advised by individual faculty in this group, are probably going to be represented well by the kinds of things that have been done in the past, right? Like, we're all like, that doesn't mean that we won't try different things, or that students, I think that a lot of the work here is that we do is dictated by the interests of the students who are in the group. And I think that I expect that to be the case moving forward. Say, yeah, I'm interested in the kinds of things you're doing, but I'm interested in studying in this very different context. Like, if you told me that I had written a paper about World of Warcraft, like 10 years ago, I would have said that's like no way, that's not where my interests lie. And yet I have in fact done that because I had a student who was very interested in doing it. And it was ethnographic work as well. And so Charlie, I don't know if Charlie's here, but I think that Charlie led that work years ago. So I think that, but my advice is to take a look at the stuff that's been done. And I think that you'll find that if you do that and you tailor your application accordingly, or you apply to the places where do that, you'll have you might have a narrower sort of engagement with the sort of PhD application sort of world, but I think it will be both more successful and ultimately more like successful, both in the sense that you're more likely to get into those programs, but also in the sense that you'll find better matches, which is really the ultimate goal of this.
Thanks, Mako. Yeah, thanks to everyone for supplying the questions. We hope that you get many of them answered today, either in breakout rooms or that we answered them. Now, let's move to breakout rooms. Floor, thank you for organizing those. We don't use Zoom too much as a group, and I don't use it personally too much. So, Floor, if you want to explain what people have to do in order to get to the breakout rooms, that'd be great.
For sure. So I just opened the breakout rooms. You can go to them yourself. So you should be able at the bottom see breakout rooms and go to the one that you want to join. So I made one for every university, and I would ask current graduate students to go to the university they're affiliated with, and then we'll meet you there.
Thank you. And then someone will come around in about 12 minutes. We'll figure out a way to alert people that we'll try and switch things up. So we'll have a conversation for about 12 minutes and another conversation for the last 12 minutes or so.
Perfect.
So the graduate students, so basically, whatever room you decide to go to, expect to stay there for about half the time and then to switch to a different one. And then I think that the graduate students who are already at that university, you should stay in your breakout room. So unless you really want to learn about stuff at another campus. So. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's wonderful seeing you. I think that in the past, the faculty will probably stay here. So you'll have an opportunity to get a sort of honest description from the students who are there. But we'll be here if folks have particular questions for us.
Yep, thanks.
Happy to keep fielding questions in the chat too.
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that I can. Some of them are big and hard.
Oh, I can, well, oh gosh, there's the person who's left who asked that question. I can chase him down, but there's a question about the master's programs. I know the answer to that one. But it's complicated. Great. Folks that are still here, are there particular questions you had for us?
Why am I still here? All right, I'll ask someone to.
Here, I can try to move
I
you.
think there's,
Okay.
yeah, there's, I think you can put yourself in a breakout room.
Really? How do
Yeah, if you
Click
there
the
should be a
Oh,
breakout
oh.
rooms
Oh,
button.
all right. All right.
I can
Here I
assign
am.
you too. Oh no, you should. All right.
Oh, there goes Hazel. Later, Hazel.
All right. Masood or Shinue, did you have questions for us? Oh, hold on. I should stop recording.